Our next speaker, Matt Fry.
So is it just me, or did anyone else notice that on the video that they used on the introduction there was wine? I feel slightly cheated right now. Okay, so my name is Major Matt Fry. I'm a chartered civil engineer and a member of the Institution of Royal Engineers. As you can see, I normally dress slightly differently when I'm at work. I'll go through a few case studies, but what I really want to focus on at the end is actually nothing to do with engineering. It's actually more about human psychology. And I'll ask you guys to be slightly open-minded to that, because I think we undervalue the role that that plays in how we make change within our organisations. So, a little bit about me. I joined the Army in 2005, having worked in industry for a number of years. I then became a troop commander, so I was in charge of around 30 to 40 artisan tradesmen. I had a tour of Iraq at that point as well, doing a search tour, so going out looking for IEDs, explosives, and disposing of them. That then led for me to be a squadron second in command, for which we developed the British Army's first ever route proving and clearance capability. So this was going out ahead of logistics convoys, again looking for IEDs, explosives, and using innovative technology to be able to make the environment safer for our personnel. I was then an instructor teaching force protection, basically the science of blowing stuff up, which was all good fun. And I'm currently Officer Commanding of 527 Specialist Team Royal Engineers. Think of that as a small design consultancy, and I will talk a little bit more about that shortly. Coming up next, I've been accepted to do another degree within the Army, and I'm going to be doing a Masters in Geospatial Intelligence, which again will relate back between how we use data within the delivery of infrastructure. I'm really looking forward to that. So in making this presentation, I've calculated that out of my sort of 15-year career so far, over 4.5 years of that has been spent in training or education full time. I can't think of many employers that invest that much into their people. Speaking of which, what does the Army do? In a nutshell, we protect the UK. Wherever the Army goes, so do the Royal Engineers. So we help the Army to move, fight, survive, and also we've added into that understand. And again, I'll come back to the systems analysis for doing that. When people think of the Army, the MOD, you often think of tanks, soldiers, all of that, everything that happens in that space, the Royal Engineers support. But I've also put a small picture up there of some technical drawings, because we need to deliver infrastructure to support all of that activity. That is where my team comes in. So I work under 6-3 Works Group. There's a place in Nottingham where all the technical experts come together. So myself as a chartered civil engineer would work with my second in command, who would normally be an electrical or mechanical chartered engineer, throw into that mix a group of highly trained soldiers that do construction, electrical, mechanical, sprinkle some surveyors and draftsmen onto there, and you've basically got a deployable consultancy that can do, on behalf of 170, my apologies, engineering design, program management, project management, and overseeing anything that the MOD would require worldwide. So we incorporate electrical, civils, construction, mechanical. All of those institutions exist already, so why would we need an institution of Royal Engineers? Well, actually the conditions that we operate under are very, very different. We have to integrate all of those different skill sets. The locations that we conduct in are austere. The level of risk that we have to operate in is very different to what we do in industry. So what we do is so subtly different that actually, yes, we do need our own institution. So it was established in 1875, and we're registered under the Engineering Council to be able to give EngTech and Chartered Engineer status. The only catch is that ordinarily you have to be a Royal Engineer to be part of it. So there's the catch. So moving on, what is the sort of stuff that I've had to deal with in the past? When I worked with Defence Intelligence, my job was to understand complex, interconnected systems with limited access to resource, limited access to information, dealing with uncertainty and risk. So you've already heard from some of the other institutions about the electrical power grid, which is one part of that big complex piece that you're looking at there. It is actually a huge bird's nest of technicality that needs to be unravelled in order for us to be able to operate and understand those environments. So in order to do that, applying a systems analysis approach, I was trying to think, well, how can we do this better? Well, rather than us trying to solve it, why don't we reach out to industry? Coming up next is a brief from an organisation called Commit. I reached out to them and they hooked us up with a bunch of experts from industry who brought a whole bunch of toys and equipment for us to play with, UAVs, thermal cameras, LiDAR scanners, and I wanted to be able to look at a complex piece of infrastructure and understand it. So we took it to a Motley Hill water treatment works. The guys worked their magic and we were able to come up with fully integrated 3D products that integrated geospatial information, photogrammetry data, LiDAR data from moving vehicles, handheld scanners, overlay onto that the thermal imagery, essentially to be able to understand that structure from a distance. So why would I do that? Well, I could be working in a permissive environment where I can go to the water treatment works, walk around it, measure everything, speak to the staff, take photographs, borrow the user manual, and then tell you how it works. Unfortunately, the environment that I work in, often it's a non-permissive environment. So as was the case in Mosul, for example, where a terrorist organisation has taken over infrastructure in order to exert power over the populace. I still need to know how that works, but I can't physically go there. But having the ability to be able to get my engineers together, put a virtual VR headset on them, and give them the ability to wander around the site using remote data captured means, and still answer that question, is a huge step forward. The thing that struck me though was the fact that the guys from industry came back and said, hey Matt, would you come to London to do a back brief with us about how this innovation happened? And I was like, you do realise I haven't brought anything to this. You guys brought all the drones, the cameras, the scanners, everything. None of this was us. It's like, yeah, but this is the first time we've actually fused all of that together to create a product that we've never used before. So that was a penny drop moment for me as well, that actually it's the integration of all these different systems, the integration of the apps that we now have access to, alongside all of the modes of collecting information and data. So I was then able to put together a small business case to try and replicate and purchase a small amount of kit and equipment to try and replicate what we did with industry. The idea being that if we could deploy this wouldn't just allow us to catch up a bit with industry, it would be putting us at the forefront of where industry is at. So that's what I'm currently working on with my team in Nottingham, in Chilwell. And some of the real successes, you're probably, you know when you go to visit your grandma and she's absolutely amazed that you've got this mobile phone that has no wires attached to it and it's just black magic. I'm hoping that the stuff I show you, just sit there and go, boring, done it, seen it, been there. The first one was literally on a project site that I was working on in the Falkland Islands, 8,000 miles away. My design team is in the UK trying to do designs for a site that they can't just get on a bus and go visit the site. So literally just getting a cheap 360 camera, knocking it together, creating a Google Street View and having access to the information made a big difference. But for us, because my organisation doesn't own that equipment or use it routinely, it can't just magic it out of nowhere. Procurement within the MOD takes a long time. 20 years for an aircraft carrier, certainly nothing of that scale. But the ability to get that information to the right people in the right place makes a difference. The other thing that we did, I don't know if you can see that, is that we managed to create full 3D models of the plant rooms that were needed on that project, which the designs on paper worked perfectly well. But once we built it into a 3D model and looked around it, it was like, well, actually, we can't access the hatches that we need to go to maintain this damn thing. So it was never going to work, but it was only by using the tools that we'd borrowed from industry to be able to prove that we could improve those designs. So these aren't capabilities, but we've been able to draw them in and give case studies to be able to show the benefit. And that's the first big thing. When you're trying to sell an idea, you're going to be the young, fresh blood going into an organisation that's potentially full of old dinosaurs. And if they don't understand what you're trying to explain to them, it's just human nature. It's easy to say no. So again, I'm coming back to the psychology bit. If I don't quite understand what you're telling me, and I'm going to have to spend money, I'm going to have to go through some effort to make your thing happen. Do you know what? I'm just going to say no and let that go away. We put barriers in place that don't really exist. It's just human nature and laziness often. Another example then, this is an example of photogrammetry just taken from a drone. This is from the aftermath of an earthquake. The ability to quickly gather just 2D photographs, create a 3D representation, which then site commanders can use to do emergency response. You can see that that's absolutely an essential tool. It's just off-the-shelf equipment. You know, and my point is, why are we not just doing this routinely? But we've got to get it into the system and get it all approved and sell the right message to be able to get that as a capability at the lowest level. We were also able to create 3D models of our task site in the Falklands, and again, this is grandma moment with the mobile phone. For me to be able to use that and develop that, I need specialist software. My organisation's massive, and not everybody has that software. We can't just magically get all of that out there to the whole organisation. So the task I set to my team is, how do we make this information accessible and shareable? Well, everybody's got PowerPoint, and then the ability to be able to visualise that thing in 3D, the fact that we see the world in 3D, that's exactly how we should be presenting our information. So again, just simple things. It's PowerPoint and a 3D model. Yawn, bore off, Matt. You'll be surprised when you come out of university and join organisations how backward a lot of them can actually be. I'm glad someone from industry is actually laughing, because it's true. Okay, so how do we tie it together then? You're going to join an organisation, you'll be bursting with ideas, you'll have studied things at university, you'll have a thirst for knowledge, and you'll want to make change. You're not going to be able to do that automatically, because it's going to depend upon the system. In order for innovation to happen, you have to start with leadership. Now, you'd like that to be at the very top of the organisation, setting the scene, the conditions for innovation to happen, creating an environment for you guys to flourish, but it doesn't always exist. But I would argue that leadership can also happen at your level. You can influence people and drive change. You also need to understand the human psychology in order to get over the barriers that are going to present themselves. You're going to need individual will and drive, which is going to need to be nurtured. And you also need to be able to do expectation management. So we had the example of the sensor that you could put inside of a substation for checking it. It's a £5 sensor, it's a great idea. But actually, when you do the expectation management piece, maybe it's not such a good idea at this moment in time. But all of that has to be balanced with the management systems and the processes to actually enable that. And if they've not been developed in such a way to nurture what you're trying to achieve, it's simply never going to happen. If you work for an organisation that isn't geared for innovation, it's just not going to happen. But once you've got all those in place, you can create a perpetuating collaborative culture for innovation to happen. Then you can create a strategy that ties all of that together. Now the problem is, all of those systems are always constantly evolving. Business changes, things move on, technology changes. And this picture will never ever sit still. It's always changing, always evolving. So you have to develop the right mindset in order to keep up with that. So what is the mindset? It's a growth mindset. And this is why, again, I'm going to bang on about understanding psychology. If you look at failure as being the limit of your ability, you're probably a fixed mindset person. If you look at failure as an opportunity to grow, learn, develop, that's the open growth mindset that you actually need. Challenges help you to grow. Adopt that. You can learn this by reflecting on it. Okay? When you have an idea, there will be naysayers that will try and put down your idea. Do not cave into that. Before I joined the army, one of my first jobs was working for a local authority in their engineering department, And I got given the task of doing a level survey on an entire housing estate. It was huge. It involved four young lads climbing up and down ladders with plumb lines and tape measures, getting rained on. And I thought, this is rubbish. So I basically went home, devised a plan in my head to be able to come up with wooden brackets and poles, and it looked absolutely Heath Robinson. And I came into work with piles of stuff in my hand, and my colleagues were just like, what on earth are you doing, Matt? What? Ball off. Thankfully, the boss sort of pitied me. Come on then, Matt, show us what you've got. And I sort of threw this contraption together, hurled it up, and demonstrated that I'd halved the amount of manpower that was required to do the job, and that I could do it far quicker with a two-man team than a four-man team. So rather than then laughing, I got sent home to go build another one for the boss, another contraption, and got given the money to do it. So again, there will be naysayers, don't let them put you off. If you actually get that mindset and understand that you can create that change, I think it is incumbent upon us to try and share that. That's why I'm actually stood here with you guys today. Innovation just doesn't happen. There's got to be a reason for it. Like when I'm getting rained on a ladder, I'm thinking that's rubbish and there's a reason to change. But often people have their own little pet projects, their pet skills that nobody ever knows about. Does anyone know of a piece of software called Unity? We've got a few people. Has anyone used it? What do you use it for? What is it? What does it do? Okay. Anyone else? Any other? What else have you used it for?
Digital twins.
Digital twins. Anything else? What was it made for in the first place?
Games.
For making computer games. And now we're using it for doing simulation modelling. We've taken a tool and we've adapted it into something else. Now, I know full well that I've probably got some soldiers in the block of an evening who are programming their own computer games. And I'm sat in the office thinking, how on earth can I share this point cloud model? How do we tap into that, you know? And if we can find those passions and nurture them, that will help drive innovation further forward. A degree of emotional intelligence is going to be useful. When you're trying to socialise your ideas with your employers, your colleagues, everyone will react differently. You need to be able to understand how they are reacting. And if they're giving you negative feedback, there's probably a reason for that. Don't take it as a barrier. Try and engage with them to figure out why it's going to pull the rug out from under you. This is one for the dinosaurs, really. A lot of people fear starting it. I've had an idea in the back of my mind for a long time, but you know, I just haven't got around to doing it yet. Don't fear that. This is the big one for me. The dinosaurs, they exist, they are everywhere. When you've created a structure and an organisation and a process, and then everyone's comfortable with that organisation, that structure, that process, well, this is what I do. And you're trying to tell me to do something that's outside of that. Well, the dinosaur doesn't want to change. They cannot hear advice. They consume lots of resource, but they're a fact of life. Do the systems analysis and figure out how you get around the dinosaurs within your organisation, or use human psychology to get them on board using the emotional intelligence that I was talking about. You can't bribe people into change. This is a big sort of frustration for me at the minute. I'm sure that in many organisations the boss will stand up and go, right, I'm going to give a cash prize for the best idea. And I just think that is the most terrible, terrible thing that we could possibly do, because if there's a cash prize for an idea, and I've got an idea, I'm going to keep that to myself. I'm not going to share that. I want that money. But my idea, if it's not been socialised with the dinosaurs and been beaten down and trials tested and actually shared and grown and nurtured, it's not going to be a good idea. Ideas become good by getting in the coffee house, getting a brew, talking about it, and by the time you get out of that coffee house, your idea has improved, better still the pub. So you need to socialise ideas for them to grow. You can't bribe people into it. Don't be disheartened if the plug gets pulled. I don't know what the actual statistic is, but I think something in the region of about 90% of all startups will fail. And it's either because it's too early, too novel, too discreet, but just keep going. Do not be disheartened. I've had my legs slapped more times than I care to mention. That's because I've often gone outside of what I've been permitted or allowed to do in order to make that positive change.
And in the end, it has paid off. So sometimes it's better to beg forgiveness than to ask permission. And I need to be careful now, because I think my boss is actually in the audience. Don't be afraid to fail, but if you do fail, fail safe, okay? So if you are attracting some sort of risk with your idea, think it through. And the other thing about it is, celebrate failure, okay? Don't feel disheartened by it, because that's how you learn, that's how you grow, that's how you get your ideas better for next time. I'm not going to go through all of these points just for the sake of time, but I've left all the words on there so that if we do share the PowerPoint slides afterwards, you can review it in your own time. But some other key points from a systematic approach as well is that education is not compulsory. You do it because you want to, and an organisation can't expect you to do that, but you need to be motivated enough to do it yourself. Organisationally, we will also break into silos. Why do we do that? Well, if we've got a whole bunch of different processes that are quite similar, it's better to group them together because we can make efficiencies and cost savings. So we end up with a silo that does one process, and then we end up with a silo that does another process. In that gap in between is all of the lost opportunity for innovation. So you need to be able to break out of silos and look left and right. A lot of the projects that I've worked on, I've been able to develop tools that have helped us because I've looked elsewhere around my organisation and pulled in the expertise that wouldn't normally be available. If you are given the opportunity to innovate and have a go and do some trials and some experimentation, again, human psychology would dictate that if it's my idea, it's awesome, it's going to be amazing, and you're going to tell everyone how amazing it is. But actually, you need to be honest with yourself. Don't skew the truth, because otherwise you will lose credibility. Okay? Celebrate failure if it does happen, but also know that any team that has never failed just looks suspicious to a seasoned manager. So yeah, that's where the sort of people, lies and statistics comes into it. I'm going to put that up as the final slide. I don't know how we're doing for time, but I mean, there's tons more. Are we good? We need to wrap up there. That's good. So if I was going to summarise, as engineers, we have to collaborate. We've all got different specialisms. Those systems that we're trying to understand are so big, so complex, that no single one of us can understand it all. If someone says to you, I'm a critical national infrastructure expert, I'd say, well, in what field? Nobody's an expert in all of it because it's too big, too complex. So we need to collaborate, we need to create networking opportunities, and that's what I would encourage all of you to start doing now. Identify all those little personal passions, so those that know how to do Unity, those that know how to do geospatial information systems. Share those skills, share that knowledge, and that's when you'll start to unlock the real potential for innovation. That's it. Thank you.